孩子们说，老师，我们喜欢你。
When students express their affection to me, I feel genuinely joyful and deeply touched. Hence, I wanted to do something in return, and I tried my best to help my students achieve their dreams.
甚至我自己都不知道怎么样去面对，我要离开了。
I didn't know how to face the moment to bid farewell, as I had already formed a deep bond with my Tibetan students. Thus, I decided to stay for another 3 years, continuing to devote myself to education in the region, and hope that I could benefit each and every child there.
This is Ma Dan, an experienced art and dance teacher with the Wuhan Tourism School in central China's Hubei province. She worked and lived in the city for 3 decades. In 2016, she left for Xizang Autonomous Region, with the ambition to contribute to education development in the region. By forming the first Tibetan-styled cheer dance team and helping students succeed in college auditions for the performing arts, her passion of teaching and mentoring has broadened the horizons of her students in remarkable ways. In June this year, Ma revisited Xizang to help with the establishment of partnerships between 2 local primary schools and 1 top elementary school in Wuhan. This facilitates learning exchanges and professional growth among educators. Hello and welcome to Footprints. This is Bob Jones. In this episode, I will get up close with Ma Dan, who goes above and beyond to make a difference to her students' education and lives. Located in the remote area of Shannan City in Xizang Autonomous Region, core teachers in 2 primary schools in Sodruk and Yodoi Township have had to take on the responsibility for delivering sports and fine arts classes due to the lack of specialized educators in these areas. In mid-June this year, Ma Dan and 5 skillful teachers with the Wuhan Red Scarf Primary School came to these schools to give classes in dance, music, craft and sports for a week. Their attempt was to enhance learning experience and share their expertise with their Tibetan colleagues. In dance classes, He Jia, one of the visiting teachers, demonstrates the movement in front, while students followed along. Conscious of the dance ability of the students, she combined simple yet iconic movements from the traditional dance style from Hubei province, known as the hand-waving dance, and the classical Tibetan drum dance called reba. Ma Dan explains the choreography of the dance.
我们所有的内容基本上都是两地的这种文化的融合。
When we designed our curriculum, we incorporated different cultural elements from both Xizang Autonomous Region and Hubei Province. For instance, we taught 2 notable songs in singing class, one reflecting Xizang and the other portraying the city where I came from. Hence, after getting to know Wuhan through the lyrics, students felt inspired to visit the city in the future. In craft class, we used light clay to make miniatures of Tibetan opera masks and Wuhan-style sesame noodles, known as hot-dry noodles. I realized that our students were more talented than we thought, as they learned really fast.
体育老师也带了很多新型的体育教具。
Ma Dan continues elaborating on the sports equipment they brought. Given the weather conditions in Xizang, they selected flying discs and pickleball, a racket sport that are suitable to be played on windy days.
这一次我们带去的这个教具和物资大概接近。
In addition, learning tools and essential school supplies worth more than 100,000 yuan, or $14,000 have been distributed to the 2 Tibetan primary schools. Thanks to the support of a local education bureau of Wuhan, an education foundation from Xizang province, and the Wuhan Red Scarf School. Returning to Xizang and meeting the local students greatly excited Ma Dan. Her enthusiasm was so infectious that her colleagues felt as if she had returned to her true home.
因为很多老师都第一次去。
It is the first time for some of my colleagues coming to Xizang. From the airport in Lhasa to Shannan, I was familiar with everything, and I introduced schools along the road to them. Hence, they said it was like I was coming home.
Her cheerful emotions were sparked by her memories of her 6 years of working in Xizang. In August 2016, Ma Dan left her hometown for the region to teach in Shannan City for 3 years. At the end of the term, she decided to continue teaching there after many of her Tibetan students requested her to stay. What drove her to relocate to Xizang, a completely unfamiliar place, was her teaching experience at a remote educational institution in Xinzhou district in Wuhan in 2012.
I gave lessons in the primary school in Xinzhou for a couple of days, and the students were so lovely. Through their eyes, I could sense their eagerness to experience different curriculums and their curiosity for the world. Since then, I have always wanted to teach in the remote school whenever there was such an opportunity.
4 years later, in 2016, Ma Dan signed up at once to teach in Xizang upon receiving the notice that 50 teachers from Hubei province would be selected to teach there for 3 years. With nearly 3 decades of teaching experience, it wasn't surprising that she was eventually chosen among the first group of teachers heading to the region. However, most of her friends expressed concerns as to whether she could cope with altitude sickness.
My father, who once served as a soldier, supported me to teach in the remote region. Back then, I barely knew anything about Xizang, as I had never traveled there before, so I wasn't sure either if I could adapt to high altitude after my friends expressed their worries. Later, after a little thought, I felt why not go for it? Hence, I packed all my necessities and mailed them to the school that I was about to work at about 2 weeks in advance.
In August, upon arriving in Xizang, she was attracted by the unique landscape, breathtaking scenery, and Tibetan-styled architecture. However, her sense of wonder disappeared just a few hours later when she arrived at her dormitory. She realized there was no grocery store in the neighborhood, and street lighting was only available in the main driveway. At that moment, the thought of leaving flashed across her mind.
After we settled in, we were told to buy an electric bicycle, so we would ride to and from school. It took about 10 minutes, and we had to ride across a vast highland barley field. When it was raining or snowing, it was really easy to slip or fall, and we all tumbled down many times. So at the beginning, because of the living conditions, I really wanted to find an excuse to leave.
What changed Ma Dan's mind was the admiration of her Tibetan students.
From the first time I came to class, my students always applauded to welcome me. It was a miracle that they already liked me even before I started class. In return, although I wasn't a core teacher, I wanted to do something for them.
Then Ma Dan started teaching music in school. The headmaster requested all the new teachers to get to know their students first, so they could carry out tailor-made teaching methods. After interacting with her students during the first class, Ma discovered their interests and decided to incorporate extra content into the class.
I found out my students truly cherish their ethnic culture, and they were also interested in popular culture such as rap, street dance, and pop music. Therefore, apart from the content included in the syllabus, I also used about 20 minutes in each class to help them broaden their understanding about music, learn and pass down their traditional culture. We also fused different cultures in the learning process.
In addition, Ma Dan also fused Tibetan culture in her extracurricular activity. As most of the students lived far away from school, they chose to stay on campus on weekdays. To enrich their experiences and develop skills outside of the regular school curriculum, teachers were encouraged to offer a variety of interest clubs based on their teaching speciality. Ma Dan had some experience in teaching cheerleading for years when she was in Wuhan, and she believed it was beneficial for students to practice, as it was a great cardio workout and could strengthen bonds among teammates and boost self-confidence. In the first year, more than 100 students joined her cheerleading group. They practiced twice a week, each class lasting for 1.5 hours. To ensure the choreography was more lively and authentic, Ma Dan devoted her spare time to studying Tibetan culture and encouraged her students to participate in the creative process.
With the assistance of the local Bureau of Culture, I studied Tibetan opera with an instructor and learned the Roba drum dance with an associate professor from Tibet University. It was quite difficult to learn the singing style of Tibetan opera, so I tried my best to grasp the essence of the body movement and facial expression. I also motivated my students to get involved when designing and arranging the movement of our cheerleading. For instance, when they held the pom-poms above their heads, I felt the decorated balls resemble the ears of a sheep. It inspired us to incorporate the gesture of flicking a whip, as in sheep herding, into the routine. My students were really excited when doing so, as it not only reflected their culture, but also aspects of their daily lives.
After 1 year of training, Ma Dan's students had a chance to represent Xizang Autonomous Region to participate in a cheerleading competition at national level, which was held in Shandong, a coastal province. To meet the requirement of the competition, she had to select about 25 members to take part in it. It would be the first time for almost all the students to leave their hometown and see the ocean in person. So they were filled with excitement and curiosity about everything they had never experienced before. Dansung Dan was one of those chosen. He says he was thrilled to present Tibetan culture on such a big stage.
It
was the first time for me going outside of Xizang. I was excited to take part in the competition as I longed for a big stage to show myself on since I was young, and also exhibit our Tibetan-style cheerleading in public. I remember I was in the front row and we performed under a huge spotlight. It was definitely a remarkable moment, as it was the biggest stage for me at that time. Ms. Ma Dan really respected our culture, as she learned about our culture and encouraged us to come up with more Tibetan-styled movements.
Eventually, their unique choreography and diligent practice won them first place in the competition. This opportunity significantly boosted the students' confidence and inspired them to set clearer life goals.
They became more self-assured and were braver to express themselves in public, as many reporters interviewed them after the competition. After seeing the world outside their hometown, my students set more specific objectives and aims. For instance, one of my students told me his ambition was to study in a university near the ocean. Hence, after realizing their aspirations, they studied more diligently and managed their time even better.
After coaching students to practice cheerleading dancing, Ma Dan noticed that many of her students showed great talent for dancing, which would be helpful if they wanted to pursue an undergraduate degree.
Some of my students were able to apply for a diploma program, but still needed to work harder if they wanted to study as an undergraduate. After practicing cheerleading dancing for a long time, I realized it was possible for them to achieve their dream if they applied for performing arts programs in university.
Since 2017, Ma Dan used her spare time to tutor more than 30 students to prepare them for college auditions. She spent 1 hour after evening study, 3 or 4 times a week, tutoring the kids before the audition. Since many of her students had only practiced dance regularly for less than 1 year, their technical proficiency naturally lagged behind those who had been practicing since their childhood. To make up for the deficiency, Ma Dan carefully chose dance play that allowed her students to convey profound emotions through performances, instead of showcasing advanced techniques.
One of the dance plays I chose for boys was titled Dad. To help them portray the depth of a father's love, I encouraged them to recall the time when their father brought them food and warm clothes from faraway home in winter. I also combined some techniques that they could master within a few months of practicing, such as spread eagle jump and punch front. With abundant emotional expression, impressive stage presence, and good technical skills, it was highly possible for my students to achieve remarkable scores.
Danzunga Dan is one of the students that Ma Dan tutored for college audition. He has recently graduated from a university in central China's Henan province, majoring in dance performance and education. He recalls how Ma Dan tutored him for the audition.
It was really challenging for me at the beginning, as I was amateur and uncompetitive in terms of passing the audition. Miss Ma Dan taught me many details of the dance. For instance, I didn't know when I had to point my toes as it was required in the test, which other students had learned from their teachers.
Apart from the academic instruction, Ma Dan also went beyond the classroom to support her students emotionally and personally. Ong Kor is a traditional festival for Tibetan farmers to celebrate the bumper harvest. According to Tibetan traditions, it is important for every Tibetan family to participate in the rituals, aimed at blessing the land and wishing for a good harvest next year. Xizang comes from a single-parent family. In 2022, his father couldn't come home, and he was ill, so his family was facing the problem that no one celebrated the festival. After hearing of the predicament, Ma Dan volunteered to take part as a family member of Xizang's. Upon arriving at Xizang's home one morning, his aunt helped Ma Dan dress in fabulous but heavy attire and put a wooden basket on her back, which was filled with local Tibetan staple food called tsampa and fine wine. However, Ma Dan didn't realize how tiring the celebrations would be until she participated in the core activity of the tradition, which was to walk around the cultivated field all day.
但是我没有想到要背的这个东西要围着整个村庄里的农田。
I didn't expect that we had to walk around the cultivated land for an entire day. At lunchtime, Xizang was worried about me, so he called me and persuaded me to go home and have a rest in the afternoon. Otherwise, I would have to continue walking for 4 more hours. I believed if others could accomplish the task, then so could I, which was also a good way to demonstrate the spirit of persistence.
Xizang says it was really moving that Ma Dan completed the entire tradition.
I appreciated Miss Ma Dan for participating in the rituals for us. She was my dance teacher, but she is also like a mother in my heart. Back then, she often visited my family. I remembered we also celebrated Tibetan New Year together.
In addition to assisting students in their studies and guiding them in life, another reason Ma Dan and other teachers from urban areas came to Xizang was to help local Tibetan teachers improve their teaching skills. The ORF approach was one of the methods that Ma Dan imparted to her Tibetan colleagues. It involves tapping different parts of the body and objects to the music, which is effective to catch students' attention, improve their reaction ability and physical coordination. Ma Dan often uses this method at the beginning of the class, as students may still be preoccupied with thoughts of what they were doing or playing during the break.
比如说，让我们荡起双脚，当当当当，当当当当，这样的拍子桌子的这样的一些。
For instance, we did body movements and clapped hands to go with the tune when we sang a children's song called Let's Row Our Oars. It effectively drew their attention to class or woken them up if they were sleepy. I always shot the video to record the teaching method I used in class and shared it with the local teachers.
After teaching in Xizang since 2016, Ma Dan should have finished her duty 3 years later. However, when it was time to bid farewell, she decided to stay for another 3 years as she realized she wasn't ready to leave, and as many of her students requested her to stay until their graduation.
I knew it was impossible to satisfy all the students, given that I always had students in their first or second year. However, at that time, I couldn't leave, as I really loved them. They said when they felt cold, the sun would warm them up. Now they felt cozy, as I brought a sense of warmth to them, which was really touching and made me stay.
After 6 years of working and living in Xizang, Ma Dan has witnessed significant changes and development of the region, particularly in education and infrastructure.
I've witnessed remarkable improvements in school facilities. When I first came to Xizang, there was lack of bathrooms in students' dormitories, and the nearest one was located in the schoolyard. Now the schools where I used to work have undergone magnificent changes. They have specially designed classrooms equipped with facilities for teaching dance and music, as well as smart classroom enabling remote learning for students. Moreover, a lot of highways have been built in Xizang. It used to take me 3.5 hours to go to the airport in Lhasa, but now it only takes 1 hour.
Ma Dan believes her journey with Xizang is far from over, as she remains committed to contributing to its education development in every way possible. She expresses that Tibetan students are like stars in the sky, lightening the way for her to go back to Xizang wherever she ends up. Ma Dan is just one typical example. In 2016, different batches of teachers from urban schools were selected to assist in education development in Xizang. By the year of 2022, more than 2,000 teachers nationwide have been assigned to work in the region with the aim of enhancing educational progress and reducing educational disparities between regions. With that, we reach the end of this episode of Footprints. If you are interested in hearing about the lives of ordinary but incredible people in China, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Just key in Footprints and you can find more stories anytime, anywhere. Hope to see you next time. Until then, bye for now.